Leviticus 25 1-55, through the Bible. Chapter 25. Theme: the sabbatical year, the year of Jubilee, the redemption of property, the redemption of persons. Not only was the Mosaic economy directed to the people of Israel, but it also pertained particularly to the land of Palestine. This is emphasized in this chapter. The laws given here could not be enforced until Israel entered the land of Canaan. They could not possibly be adapted to the wilderness. There is a constant and almost monotonous reference to, and repetition of, the word land. When ye come into the land, rest unto the land, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land. That last phrase is found 10 times. Everything in this chapter is tied down to the land which God gave Israel. The Mosaic economy was directed to a peculiar people, Israel, and to a particular land, Palestine. Furthermore, it is directed to a people engaged in agriculture. There are those who try to saddle the Old Testament law as a way of life upon the church. These laws don't fit in California, and they won't fit other areas of our nation. Proclaim liberty throughout all the land is inscribed on our Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. Yet, we need always remember that these laws were given to a particular people in a particular land. One cannot read Leviticus, nor the rest of the Bible, without noticing the recurrence of the number 7. It is the number used to denote completeness. It does not mean perfection in every instance, but it denotes completeness. There is a definite connection of the many occurrences of the number 7 in Leviticus, with the number 7 in Revelation. Both books use it in a structural way. Time was divided into sevens both for the civil and ceremonial calendars. There is the seventh day, the seventh week, the seventh month, the seventh year. The calendar was geared to sabbatic times and the Levitical code was run on wheels of 7 cycles. This occurs again in Revelation. God rested on the 7th day, not because he was tired, but because he had completed creation in 6 days, and there was no more to do. The Sabbath was made the basic unit of measurement of time, and then from the Sabbath there were ever-expanding units of time measurement. The sabbatical year. And the Lord spake unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Leviticus 25:1. It should be noted that this reverts back to Mount Sinai, but it is to be put into effect when they get into the land. Remember that God spoke out of the tabernacle in Leviticus 1:1. Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when ye come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. Leviticus 25:2. This is amazing. There is a Sabbath for the land as well as for man. The 7th day is for man, and the 7th year is for the land. The 7th day harkens back to creation when God rested from his labors, for his work of creation was complete. Sabbath means rest, and in its ultimate meaning it refers to the rest of redemption. There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. For he that is entered into his rest, he also hath ceased from his own works, as God did from his. Let us labor therefore to enter into that rest, lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief. Hebrews 4:9-11. Rest in these verses means literally keeping of a Sabbath. It is obvious in this day of scientific agriculture, that letting the land lie fallow on the 7th year was good for the land. It was also a rest for those who tilled the soil, although they could discharge other necessary duties. This sabbatical year for the land was to deliver the Israelite from covetousness. Actually, it was the breaking of this regulation concerning the sabbatical year that sent Israel into the 70 years Babylonian captivity, 2 Chronicles 36:21. They failed to keep 70 sabbatic years over a period of 490 years, so they went into captivity for 70 years. 6 years thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof, but in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for the Lord. Thou shalt neither sow thy field, nor prune thy vineyard. Leviticus 25:3-4. This makes it perfectly clear that the sabbatical year related to the land. They were to sow their fields and prune their vineyards for 6 years, and then neither sow nor prune on the 7th year. There is a curse upon the earth as well as upon man, and it is by the sweat of man's brow that he extracts bread from the soil. There will be a day when the curse shall be lifted from creation, Romans 8:20-22 and Isaiah 35:1-2. The southland where I was reared has learned, to its sorrow, that one should let the land lie fallow. A great deal of the land has been worn out by planting cotton every year, year after year. The sabbatical year was actually a good agricultural principle which God gave to them. It is quite interesting that God knows all about farming, isn't it? That which groweth of its own accord of thy harvest thou shalt not reap, neither gather the grapes of thy vine undressed, for it is a year of rest unto the land. And the Sabbath of the land shall be meat for you, for thee, and for thy servant, and for thy maid, and for thy hired servant, and for thy stranger that sojourneth with thee. And for thy cattle, and for the beasts that are in thy land, shall all the increase thereof be meat. Leviticus 25:5-7. This shows how the physical needs of the people were supplied during the sabbatical year. The land was so productive that it was not necessary to plant each year. In the Euphrates Valley, in the days of Abraham, it was not necessary to plant at all. The grain grew without planting. The ground in Israel produced enough to supply the needs of the owner, his servants, and the stranger. Even the cattle could survive and probably grew fat by grazing on the untilled land. God took care of both man and beast, Israelite and stranger, rich and poor, during the year of rest. They were all given enough to eat. However, they could not harvest anything to market it. Years ago, before all the subdivisions were built, there were many fine vineyards near Pasadena. I had a very fine neighbor who had a wonderful vineyard of Concord grapes. He was a generous man and he would always bring me a basket or two during the season. He was a Seventh-day Adventist and at times he would try to goad me about the Sabbath day. He would ask me why I didn't keep the Sabbath day. I would tell him that I did keep the Sabbath day, on Saturday and on Sunday and on Monday and on Tuesday and every day of the week. I tried to explain to him that Sabbath means rest and that we have entered into the rest of redemption. We have ceased from works and put our trust in Jesus Christ, which makes every day a day of rest, a rest in Jesus Christ. Of course, he didn't like it that way. Then I would ask him a question. Are you keeping the Mosaic law? Are you keeping the Sabbath as they did in Israel? He assured me that he was. Then I showed him chapter 25 of Leviticus. I told him there was not a Sabbath day only, but there was also a sabbatical year. In that year the poor people could go into the vineyard and glean grapes. I asked him to let me know when he would observe that sabbatical year so I could get my basket and glean some of his grapes. He answered, "You'd better not go into that vineyard without my permission." May I say to you, he was not keeping the Mosaic law. He was keeping only a small part of it. He did not keep the sabbatical year nor the year of Jubilee. God was teaching Israel several lessons. He never permitted any one of them to monopolize the land so that the poor people were not taken care of. God was protecting the land and the poor people at the same time. Also, he was teaching them that the land was cursed but that the time would come when the land would produce in abundance. Today, people worry about the population explosion and the inability of the earth to produce enough food for the people. When the curse is removed, my friend, this earth will produce in a way never seen since the fall of man. God is the supplier of all human needs. God is the owner of this earth.